is Tim Rosenberg. I'm a senior UX designer at Well Health, and below is a URL to my ADPList profile. And with me is Hussein Dawani. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Tim. Hi, guys. I'm Hussein Dawani. I'm a UX lead at Hackathon, currently based in Hong Kong. Below my name, you can also see my profile as well.
So I want to begin with step one of just, the very first step. If you haven't done this already, learn the craft. So step one to learn the craft, see if there's a boot camp that you can attend to get introduced to it, maybe an online course. And, if it's within your budget or means, receive formal education at some institution. And then ultimately, you'll learn best by doing a real world project.
For me, it never worked in a formal education manner. Like I said, I studied filmmaking. So during a filmmaking course, I had two color theory related courses. That's where I learned about visual design, and I started practicing things around and following things on YouTube and etc. So that's where it was my foot in the door, learning more about design and design thinking in general. And I think it's more about whatever you observe around you and whatever resources you have available for yourself, just try and leverage on that and go for it. You don't have to do a major investment. A lot of times people think, okay, if I spend a lot of money, then only I'll be able to learn something. But I think it's more about what can you learn around you. It can be through formal education, boot camps, or even through YouTube as well.
I got a formal education myself with graphic design, but I was able to get it through scholarship. So if it's not within your means, there's a lot of really great ways to get quality learning through non-traditional paths as well. So yeah, really great insight. Once you've got your education, you've learned the principles of it. I'm sure we could do a whole video on learning about the craft. But once you've done that, create a portfolio. I wanted to share my portfolio as an example to go over these 4 steps. So a good portfolio should talk about the problem, what's your process, what was the product that you created, and then what result did it deliver. Now, you might be asking okay, well, if this is for an internship, I might not have that real world experience yet. I would recommend to make it hypothetical as much as possible. So one project on my portfolio, so this is my personal website. I kind of showcase the work that I do, and one of the projects that I have, I start out by saying, okay, here's an overview of the objective of the project. This could be anything that you like. Show a little bit of research documentation. Now, design does kind of create a very broad spectrum. You might be more on the research side, or you might be on the visual UI side. So depending on where you find yourself, you might be a little bit more heavy on certain sections. So talk about, what research do you do? How do you plan it with wireframes, user flows? So this is all about the process. What you don't want to do is you don't want to just show the finished. So as we get closer to the high polished UI designs, you can then later have a story of how you got. So when you want to present your portfolio, you don't want to just say, hey, here's the prototype, I'm done. You want to say, hey, here's the process in which I got.
So I have a little bit different approach compared to what Tim has. So for me, definitely I do follow problem, process, product, and results. But I divide my portfolio into online portfolio and offline portfolio. And now the difference between that is what Tim just showed is exactly what I will put on my offline portfolio is something that I will have when I walk into the interview. But for my online portfolio, which would be my public portfolio, I would actually show bite-sized content. So what I will show is basically on top, I have my my final results, and then I will have the problem statement, what was the objective behind it, and maybe the team involved. If not, if I don't mention what is the team, who's the team involved, then I will at least mention what was my role in this project and interaction and interactive flow. What was the user flow etc. And then in the end, I'll have a call to action button. For example, it will say interested to know more about this project. Let's connect. So let's connect would be a call to action button for me. So for me, that a bite-sized content to showcase my portfolio. So I wouldn't avoid showing a full A to Z project or the whole process, because I believe for my experience, at least in Hong Kong, not a lot of hiring managers users have a lot of time to review your portfolio, especially when they receive like 100 portfolio and like they have like hardly like 2 to 7 minutes to grab that attention. So how can you use your online portfolio as a hook for them to catch the fit, right? So yeah, that's how I'll do it.
So yeah, there's different ways to kind of showcase your portfolio. Next up is your resume. So when it comes to your resume, you are a designer. So I would say each company does have a different approach, but me personally, as a hiring manager, I do spend time looking at how well the resume is designed, because it shows that you really care about every user, even the recruiter who's looking at your resume. And then you might be looking at different types of roles. I recommend that you have multiple versions of your resume so that you can submit a different version depending on the role that you're looking for.
For me, like I usually create a brand identity for myself first. So let's say like, I will have to design my resume and also my portfolio. I'll create a brand identity around it and I'll try to make sure like, it is part of the similar design system. And then in my resume, of course, I will talk about my personality, but also at the same time, I will highlight some of the skills. So for me, like, it could be like two kinds of skills. So first is like behavioral skills and the second one is functional skills. So behavioral skills are more about collaboration, like, teamwork and the design handoff part, etc. And functional skills would be around like the tools I use, the methodology I follow, etc. So I would definitely highlight some of these skill set in my resume as a content. And then also I will mention like any relevant experience plus certification or education I have. Make sure like you pick up like, some people do like 10, 20 certifications. So pick up like, some of the most relevant ones to showcase, which would get you this job.
So once you've got your materials ready, the next step is defining your search and what kind of internship you're really looking for. Now, there's different opinions on the different types of industries that you could look out for. Now, you might decide to go in the government, public sector, you might go in private, you might go in nonprofit. It really depends on your personality, what kind of environment you thrive in. So kind of think about, would you work well in a small company or a large company? And also think about like, maybe if you have any like industry background. So if you volunteered at a certain industry, that might give you a leg up as you apply as an intern.
I think definitely like for me as well, like, whenever I'm looking for any new opportunity or whether actively or like in a passive manner, like if I'm looking for it, then I will define like, what industry I'm interested in, but also at the same time, I would also mention what are the other attributes that I want in my job. So for example, teamwork, like, whether I want like more tech driven organization or like, I think, or like, how well do they balance the time? Because a lot of companies, like, they would definitely like pay you a good amount of salary and they are definitely fitting, like checking their boxes. But at the same time, like, they require different kind of time investment from you.
So you've got your resume together, what kind of company you want to work for. The next step is outreach. Now, I will say one great way to kind of speed up your internship process is joining an organization such as the Awesome Design People List or any other professional organization. I know that AIGA is another good example, but joining an organization of design professionals and build meaningful relationship. Don't go in on the first day and say, hey, can you refer me to that internship on the first day? Take time to build meaningful relationships, and then over time, you'll naturally get great referrals. So you can volunteer and you can kind of put your name out there and be involved in your local design community, or join a virtual design community. And on a virtual platform, I would recommend produce a lot of design content. So that's, posting on Dribbble, posting on LinkedIn, looking on Instagram and YouTube, record short content of yourself, maybe some short videos, and just showcase, how much you know. Maybe look at an existing app and say, oh, if I were to redesign an app like maybe Craigslist, here's what my redesign of Craigslist could look like. And create some content, put it out there. Hussein, you mentioned that someone found you because of the content that you produced. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
So from my side, I think my first full-time design job I got like through a referral as well. The way how it worked was like, I connected with someone like, who was attending a design hackathon, and like we just casually were chatting, and like he told me about one of his friends who was looking for full-time designer, and I told him like I'm interested. Like that's how I got my first interview for full-time in Hong Kong. So for me, like definitely like the community works really well. So you should know like what are the kind of people you want to connect with, what industry or like what kind of community are they part of. Create more content. For me, like I did like a 100-day UI challenge, and I was posting on like Dribbble, Behance, Facebook, Instagram, like everywhere. Like I was like, okay, how can I maximize the reach of my content was by posting everywhere.
So the final step is apply an interview. So the best place to start is with your relationships. So people that you already know, in my experience, those have been the best referrals. So, all those times you volunteered, you're involved in these organizations, you join a Slack group, starting with those relationships are probably the most efficient way to get referred to a job. And you might start with like quality applications. So some applications you want to spend a lot of time on, make sure it's like really well crafted and personalized for that particular company. So maybe it's like a company that you really, really want. But then, realistically, let's say if you're, applying for Google or Apple, it's very competitive. You might not get it the first attempt. So it's hard to customize like a cover letter and a, custom resume for each company. So you can also come up with a couple of really good templates that you apply on a quantity basis. So you might say, okay, well, here's maybe like some two options that might be a stepping stone to get where I want to be. And try to keep a very, very good way to organize everything. So when I was applying for roles, I used like different task management tools to say, okay, this is the ones I applied to. These are the ones I'm waiting to hear back from. And it really helped keep me organized. So I knew which one to keep up with. So it really helps to stay on track. And then as you're doing all the previous steps, it makes the final step a lot easier. So when you're in the interview, you're jumping in and you want to make sure that you can showcase your work. The most important thing about an interview is that you want to demonstrate that you have cultural alignment. So let's say that the design team of the company is very like outgoing and social and very casual. If you're similar to that, you want to showcase that you're also in alignment with that culture. But they might be very formal, very quiet, and more serious. If that's you, then you want to showcase that you're in alignment with that similar energy. So during the interview, you want to showcase your interpersonal skills, your communication skills, and the things that you can't really measure in a job application. So that kind of covers like the application and interview. I know that we're a little bit tight on time, so I like to maybe just jump in straight into the Q&A.
What does a strong designer resume look like? So for me, like at least strong designer resume would be the one where you showcase your skills. Like a lot of times, like, of course, like we do have our portfolios and everything, but before the portfolio, I think they actually look for like, they actually look at your resume. So in the resume, like in a very precise way, how can you like share your skills, some of the experiences you did? So in experience you mentioned, like, usually like people talk about like, what the company used to do. I don't want to know what is the description of the company. It's better if you just mention to me the website or like the name of the company. I can definitely look for it. But talk to me about like, what kind of value did you added in your experience? So for example, if I'm mentioning about like my current role at Decathlon, I'll be like, okay, I was able to push the turnover every year by 5% by running this initiative. So maybe like it would be like a search engine, whatever you did in that project or in that role, like, just care about that as well. So I think there are like different combination of like really strong resume.
What if you don't have a traditional path? So let's say that you're not a grad student. What if you're not, what if you didn't go through formal education? How can I get a UX UI internship that way? So that's a really great question. And I know a lot of individuals are going through like a mid-career transformation. So maybe you're not a recent college grad in your early 20s. You could be, further along and you want to switch. So, there's always an opportunity based on the work. So the work that you show and the work that you demonstrate is more important than maybe a degree that you might have. Because let's say, even if you have a degree, but you don't have a good portfolio, that wouldn't even get you that far either. So if you don't have formal education, or if you're not a recent college grad, I would recommend seeing if you could work with maybe a nonprofit to start out with, to partner. And so maybe you do some pro bono work to start out with it. Sometimes a lot of nonprofits are very eager to get talent. So they're more than happy to help you build a portfolio to start. And you can also work with startups. So if you have a really good portfolio that you start out with, I would recommend like work with startups that are eager to take on early talent and create passion projects. So if there's something that you're passionate about, but you don't have work experience to actually have a real life example, put together some passion projects and showcase it so that you can demonstrate what you could do if given the chance, even if you don't have a formal education or background.
For me, like I showed my daily UI challenge work to my employer, and that's how I got my first internship. And also like your side hustles matter. So like, whether you have
Yes.
a crazy idea or whether your friend has a crazy idea and you're able to like push it through and like materialize it properly and like design it, and like you can showcase your skill sets in those side hustles as well.
How do you test the interviewer, making sure that they're qualified? Because you could be jumping into a toxic work culture. Maybe it's a bad fit. Maybe they micromanage. So I would say that one telltale sign is if one red flag is if there's no other designer and they want you to be the lead designer, but they describe the position as like an internship role. So that's definitely like a common thing that I see, especially among early stage companies. So always look and make sure that the person that you're interviewing, they have design leadership background. You want to know, can this person mentor me? Can they help me grow? For your first design position, I would highly recommend don't join a role where you're the only designer, because you won't grow. You're still early, you're still learning, and you can't really lead the team in design if you're not being led. So I'd say look at the design department. If they've got a good leadership structure and they've got their own design department, then that's a positive thing to look for. And just look for like the intangible communication skills. So notice their nonverbal body language. What's their tone of voice? Are they energetic and happy to talk with you? Are they rude? Are they like dismissive? That tells you a lot about the culture and whether or not you would be a good fit, and how much they take the time to really speak with you. And that you can learn a lot by what they're not actually saying. So that's how some things that I would recommend to get a pulse for the culture before you jump in.
For me, like whenever I apply for any role, what I would do is I would first speak to their former employees. I think they're able to like fill the like
look on Glassdoor.
Yeah, so they can give you like like they can definitely tell you the realistic picture around it.
When it comes to design patterns, this is a really great question that I like. So I really like using the Bootstrap library for web. So when it comes to web, I use the Bootstrap Figma library. And then for mobile, I like to use the iOS. Even if I'm designing to be multi-platform, I just love iOS so much. I just love how well designed it is. So I use those two design systems. So Bootstrap for web and iOS for mobile.
For me, like if I'm designing like more of a general desktop version or mobile version, I'll definitely like go for Bootstrap and iOS as well. That's where most of our user base. But other than that, if you want like access to design libraries, like you can just go on like Figma's community platform and just look for design system. You'll have a lot of design systems that you can take a look at. Different companies have different design systems, so not all of them are like universal for everything.
How do you get your first internship to get the experience? If the interview tells you that you don't have enough experience, it's kind of a chicken or the egg, because you need the internship to get the experience, but you need the experience to get the internship. What I would recommend in that scenario is create your own kind of design freelance business. Come up with a creative name, do the branding, create the website, maybe use a simple website builder if you don't know how to code, and come up with all of the pages and the content and showcase what it is. And avoid using your name. So rather than like Tim Rosenberg, come up with like a really cool like UX design company and say that you were the founder of this company, and say that, go up to, nonprofits and volunteer to design something for them. And technically they were your client, even if they didn't pay you, even if it's pro bono, if it's a real person, if it's a real customer, even if you tell them, hey, like I need to build my portfolio, can I use this as a case study? When you go into the interview, you can say, hey, this is the work that I've done. And the way that you present it, it showcases that you have what it takes to be in a professional work environment, even if you don't have like a W-2 employer to take you there.
For me, like I always did like side gigs like every time in order to like get there. But also like, I think in the beginning, I helped out like some of my friends who were running some startups. So I was not exactly employed by them legally, but like I was like, oh yeah,
right.
I worked there. Right. So, but yeah, that's how I did it. I showcased that like, oh yeah, I was employed there and everything like that. But they don't know how much I was getting paid, right? So that's how I showed my work experience.
When you go into an interview, you like they often don't care about the technical details. Like a typical interviewer won't ask you, okay, how much did you get paid for this real life project? So they typically won't ask that kind of question. You can just say like, hey, those are a real project, and just convey that it's legitimate, and then it still has the same amount of info as if it really was. Just wanted to thank you all for joining us. This has been a really great discussion.